So it's time to recap the 3 games that the Leafs played this past week. October 25th, which was against the Hurricanes. October 27th, which was against the Blackhawks. And then October 30th, which was against the Red Wings. Starting with the game on Monday against Carolina, we lost 4-1. Some highlights, though. Matthews, obviously, he returned and he scored. Wraparound on Freddie. Pretty sweet. That's a nice way to return to the game. Campbell didn't have the best game. Many of those goals were on him. Defense was horrible, which has pretty much been the story for the season so far. Shots, power play, everything was the same as Carolina. We had, I think, a few, the differential in shots was by a few, but roughly the same. Power play, none of us scored on the power play. Face-off percentage, I'm pretty sure was 50% for each. So everything was relatively the same. The two teams played the same. It was just that, and this has been the theme so far this season, they get enough shots and opportunities and they just have so much trouble capitalizing. And then when it comes back the other way to our D, we can't hold them off. So we can't score and then we have trouble holding them off. That's been the theme so far this season. And seeing it on Monday, a lot of people started to panic because it didn't look good. Honestly, it still doesn't look the best, but you can tell that there's been improvement since Monday. So hopefully they continue to work on that, especially with the tough week that they have coming up with Vegas, Tampa, and Boston. So that was it for that game. Not much to say about it because it wasn't... It was honestly, it was frustrating and confusing. And it's because we played, stat-wise, we played relatively the same as Carolina. It's just we could not capitalize on anything and we could not stop anything. So that's why it was confusing, because it shouldn't have been 4-1. It should have been closer at least, but it also should have or could have been a win. And that's what makes it so confusing and so frustrating. And speaking of confusing and frustrating, moving on to Wednesday against Chicago, we did come out with a win in overtime, 3-2. It was an ugly win, but it was a win, so we just got to take it. At this point, ugly goals, ugly wins, we just got to take it. So Nylander had the overtime winner, and he's been playing great, so good for him. Campbell was also rocky again, but when it came to being 2-2, there were a few saves that he made that could have easily ended the game. So although getting to the 2-2 point could have been and is partially placed on Campbell, he did step up towards the end to give them the chance to go to overtime and take the game. That you have to agree with. He didn't play good the game. There were goals that should not have gone in, but when it came to it, he stood up. There were countless breakaways and odd man rushes that Campbell was able to stop. And that's another point on how bad the D have been. The number of odd man rushes and breakaways that we've given up have been too many to count. It's not a good thing. So the fact that Campbell was able to step up when our D started to collapse to bring us to overtime and help us get the win, that was huge. Things also started to look brighter for our offense in this game with the new lines and everyone starting to head in the right direction. This was also the game where Matthews was yelling at Hall on the bench for mishandling the puck and giving the puck away and playing shit, I guess you can say, when they were on the ice together. I know people have mixed feelings about players yelling at each other on the bench, in front of cameras and fans and stuff. And I have been one of those people in the past, but in times like this, I think it's necessary when your team is going through something like this. I think it's necessary. I think it had to be done. I mean, these guys have thick skin. It's not like they go into the dressing room and cry about it after. They take it, listen to it, and then they move on. And it does also show incredible leadership from Matthews and being able to step up and voice his frustration, especially in times when things aren't going well, because then people look to him as a leader and they look at him and say, look, He's upset with how we're playing. He's frustrated with how we're playing. We got to change this. And then, they say, I agree with what he's saying. We're playing like shit. We got to change this. So it's key for, especially in moments like this when they were down and the game wasn't going well and it was against the Blackhawks, who are not doing good at all right now, really. So it does show leadership, and I agree with what he did. And of course, we know next game, Hall was a healthy scratch. So moving on to Saturday versus Detroit, we did come through with a win, 5-4. And I do have to say it was one of the more, possibly the most solid game they have played, even though towards the end it did come too close for comfort at the end of the game. And they gave up, I don't remember how many leads they gave up. They were winning. They had the lead with 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, and then they just kept on. The Leafs scored, and then they let the Red Wings score, and it kept on going back and forth. So it did get too close for comfort towards the end, but it was one of the more solid games that they have played so far this season, which again is a positive sign. Not saying it means that it's going to improve from here, but it means that it could. So the D lines were also different, like I said, for this game because Hall was the healthy scratch. So there was Riley with Dermott, there was Muzzin with Brody, and then there was Sandin with Liljegren. These lines, these defensive lines, were immensely better. Each one was strong, and you can tell that something different was done to the lines because they were playing that much better. Again, they did collapse and give back those goals that when they were going back and forth, but overall, the whole game, they played so much better than they have been. Obviously, like I said, mistakes were still made, but the formation is heading in the right direction. You look at Riley and Dermott, they have familiarity playing with each other, and they have a similar playing style. So them two together, they might be able to balance each other out a bit more. Brody and Muzzin, it was not a pair I would have pieced together, but they worked really well together. And Muzzin also got the first Leafs D goal this season, first defenseman to get a goal for the team this season. He actually had a really good game compared to how he has been playing, and it's good to see someone like Muzzin start to pick up his game. So that pairing, it worked well, and it was a surprise to me, but I liked it. And then Sandin and Liljegren, to me, they created some worry when it was announced that they would be playing together. But it turned out really good. Liljegren is NHL ready. People have been saying that for some time now. And I really hope that we see him a lot more often. Even though those two have less experience, like Sandin and Liljegren, they don't have much NHL experience at all, really. They work extremely well together, and they prop each other up, they build each other up, and they play tough too. It doesn't look like they're the type that would, but they do. They throw bodies around and stuff, and they play smart hockey. I would be completely okay if they decide to keep Hall out for the time being, especially when they're trying to get the team, they're trying to get back on the right track with the team. I would highly suggest and agree with them leaving Hall out and keeping Liljegren in for the time being, at least. So overall, it was a really strong game. There were a few 2-goal leads that were given up close to the end, but they were able to hold on. And now, like I said, I will take any kind of win as long as it gets them their footing. And aside from defense, there were a lot of chances for all our forward lines as well. The Matthews line is still having trouble putting pucks in the net, but they are getting a lot of opportunities. The Tavares line played amazing. Each one of them had a goal. The third line is also playing well. Still improvement to be done there in terms of keeping the cycle going and stuff, but they are playing well. The fourth line is reliable. Spezza has been a huge anchor, not just for his line, but for the whole team. And Simmons is also stepping up too. When he's on the ice, you know he's on the ice. And I think people don't really expect much of him this season because last season he kind of let some people down with how he performed. But I would say he is stepping up now. And then Mrazek, another story for this season, he also started this game in his first game back, and he played really well. I mean, there were a couple he should have had, but there were also, again, similar to how Campbell played on Wednesday, there were also a lot of crucial saves he made to keep them ahead, especially when especially when the lead started to dwindle and started to get close to the end, when they let Carolina come back a couple times. He was there and he stood strong, and he helped them hold on for the win. That is for sure. So that's a recap of all the games that happened this past week. Come back next week for another video on more game recaps.